All righty. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Brock Beard, FIRSTCAR.info, and I'm coming at you from the conclusion of a thrilling and very unusual race at Loudon, New Hampshire. We have unusual features at both ends of the field. First and foremost, the 2021 LASTCAR Cup Series leader, Eric Almirola, has officially punched his ticket into the playoffs with his first non-super speedway win. And in convincing fashion in a race that was cut short by both rain and darkness, and having to beat both Ryan Blaney and Brad Keselowski, and ultimately holding off, of all people, Christopher Bell, the Xfinity Series winner on Saturday, in a tremendous finish. And a race that began with rain, and much like the 2001 All-Star race, but without backup cars this time, multiple leaders being involved in accidents at the start, both Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. suffering damage. Kyle Busch ultimately out of the race before it barely even started, with just 8 laps complete. And Kyle Busch, with his second straight last place finish at New Hampshire, the first driver to finish last at New Hampshire in consecutive seasons. A lot to go over throughout the rest of the field there, but obviously a shakeup in 2 championship battles this year, as now Kyle Busch and Joe Gibbs Racing join the LASTCAR rankings for this season, and Almirola and Stewart-Haas Racing finally have a spot in the playoffs assured, although Kevin Harvick still looking to hang on to his spot on points along with Denny Hamlin, and now the new bubble driver of Tyler Reddick, or actually I guess the old bubble driver from before, but now by an even narrower margin against his teammate. Coming into the 2-week break for the Olympics, a lot of stories to certainly go over as we look ahead here. So hope you really enjoyed the race. I know I certainly did. A lot of things to certainly talk about from it there. A lot of controversy at the same side too. I watched the start of this race remotely. That's why I didn't get the first updates there at the beginning of the race. But I was just watching that at a restaurant there at the start, and suddenly seeing Kyle Busch, of all people, sliding into the outside wall along with Truex. A very unusual set of circumstances to start it, and ultimately resulted in one of the shortest last place battles in recent memory at New Hampshire. Usually you get pretty low attrition in recent years, but that certainly wasn't the case this time around. But the race that ensued after that, it was certainly enjoyable, because we had a situation where, what do we not have? We didn't have a tremendous amount of wrecks. We didn't have a whole lot of restarts outside of the original stage cautions. But we did have some fantastic racing, drivers coming and going, people trying different strategies. Matt Benedetto, just days after that emotional post that he had about the frustrations he had with the Wood Brothers team this year, and that they had just started to gel. And then, of course, the news coming about him now losing that ride to Harrison Burton next year. Coming off with a good run in this one here, trying some strategy there with darkness approaching. Ultimately, the race was cut short by, I believe, about 8 or 9 laps at the finish of the original 301 scheduled laps. But Eric Almirola, his first win since 2018. Kudos to Dale Jr. in the booth there for actually addressing how many starts he's had and how few wins he's had. Certainly, this is a driver that has faced his number of obstacles, not the least of which the struggles he's had this year that have made him much more of a feature on my site, perhaps, than other websites. But this time around, good to see, just a tremendous story on here. I mean, of course, we still have post-race inspection. Hopefully things are fine on that end there. We just don't know one way or the other. It could be just as much of a toss-up as anything else. But again, so far, Almirola in victory lane and in the playoffs here after, of all tracks, New Hampshire, a track that he said that was actually one of his favorites, although looking over statistics, there was some decent runs there, but it wouldn't say that it was overwhelmingly positive there. A couple good runs in the 43 car in the top 10, a 3rd place finish in 2018, his first year with Stewart-Haas, and then just last year drawing the pole and finishing in the 7th spot during the pandemic season there. So a good effort that he had last year. But yeah, good to see that one comes together there, and a good performance for him and the Stewart-Haas team. So a lot to really talk about on that end. Thank you so much for the super chat there, Beast of Metal. For shame, NASCAR, this is what happens when you sell yourself to the Ponzi schemer. He appointed those buffoons to execute his diabolical will. Well, I assume you mean about the issues with the charter system, but definitely clarify for sure. I'd be happy to elaborate on that. But unless there's some kind of controversy with Smithfield and the whole bacon thing or whatever, I don't know. But thank you for the super chat for sure. Gonna be interesting to see what goes from here. I mean, the next few races we have after the break in a couple of weeks, between the races over at Watkins Glen, the Indianapolis road course, Bristol, and then I believe the Daytona night race is right after that. And then we're going to be slammed headlong into the playoffs from there. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm forgetting something. I'm trying to do that from memory. But certainly those races by themselves, are we going to get some more different winners, or are we going to just get more people racking up victories today? I think there's a lot that the Penske team in particular can take positively from this. The fact that Joey Logano had that penalty at the very beginning of the race for the bit of a Sterling Marlin situation by the crew there prior to the restart of the event. Ultimately coming back in there and actually battling for position with Brad Keselowski, who himself, along with teammate Ryan Blaney, were looking to really have some of the best cars out there. And then Almirola, much like other drivers we've seen before, but maybe from a more distant past, working his way through the pack and just kind of finding a way to get up there and be in the right place at the right time. Seemed like his teammate Kevin Harvick was going to have a better shot at it there. But ultimately, that car kind of seemed to plateau, and the 10 just got better and better. And apparently, he was holding back even at some point. So that ended up spelling the difference there for him, certainly. But yeah, not to say this race is without controversy, and certainly a couple to start off with here. First and foremost, and of course, Nicholas Gray, you're bringing it up perfectly on this. You have the situation with the rain at the beginning of the race. Now, they have spotters all around the track. And it seems like whenever there's rain in the equation, we saw this back at COTA, of course, whatever reason the officiating isn't quite as well done in this case. Certainly here, you could say anything about a storm springing up or anything like that. But then again, there were concerns that the drivers had even a lap before the incidents that happened at the beginning of the race. And there was a rush to get it started. I didn't like that later in the race. It was kind of mischaracterized by the booth where they were making it sound like the start of the race was delayed by rain. It really wasn't. It started about the same time it was going to, and then it was delayed after running those first 8 laps. So that just, to me, that kind of reeks more of kind of a PR attempt there to kind of save face a little bit. It's unfortunate with that situation there. I think we saw a little bit of this yesterday as well. I had a bit of a debate about that on the Xfinity series side, and we'll certainly get into that as well. But yeah, when you have rain out there and you're running slick tires, even if it's a smaller track, like a New Hampshire or a Martinsville, it can be very dangerous very quickly. And, I know that maybe this won't get quite as much outrage out there because I know Kyle Busch is more than his share of detractors. But if you had another driver out there, like anybody else in the field, if it happened to Chase Elliott or something, for example, you probably have quite a bit more furor over it. But certainly, yeah, I mean, if you're going to have these guys run in any kind of rain, yeah, show some abundance of caution. It's funny. It's just interesting with the officiating being what it is, that NASCAR at some point seems so eager to throw cautions and at other times very reluctant to do so. And there's not much transparency into how and why they do it. Even situations during today, I mean, I think there were some positives, like Cody Ware's spin, for example, not throwing a caution and wasting a bunch of time and just keeping the race going green at that point. But certainly the caution that was not thrown for the rain is another example of the opposite. Beast of Metal, thank you for your other super chat there. Yeah, Kaufman, he's at the key position so no one notices as he bleeds the sport dry. That's what causes moronic choices like racing on wet ovals. Okay, I share your frustration for sure. And there were no shortage of memes. By the time I got back and was logging on here, I'm sure it was like about the 900th person to tweet pictures of Will Power's double bird to the officials after the controversial race at New Hampshire back in 2011 for the IndyCar series, where rain also plagued that event and ultimately wrecked Will Power out of the event and caused controversy between Oriol Servia and Ryan Hunter-Ray for the win. Luckily, the finish of this race was not so plagued by it, and the rain held off enough that they could get it in. The forecast yesterday was certainly not very promising. When it was going to sleep yesterday, it still showed about a 90 to 95% chance of rain, which dropped down quite a bit to an opening for a few hours and then increasing to about 45% later in the day. But yeah, still, I think the fact that this has happened at a time immediately after the Atlanta race where we had so many drivers speaking out about a lack of communication between NASCAR and the drivers, specifically about the resurfacing of Atlanta, and what their intent is in terms of narrowing the groove versus widening other grooves and all that, and every driver being pretty consistent in that. I think it's pretty damning that we have yet another example of it immediately afterwards. And, again, it was good to see, I guess, Steve O'Donnell in the booth and all that during it. But what remains, though, is, again, another failure to communicate. I would still extend that to the situation with Logano and the stuck throttle. I think stuck throttles need to be treated extremely seriously. Now, in this particular case, when further information was revealed that a crew member was reaching under the hood during a red flag and pulling it out, then, of course, yeah, there should be some kind of penalty there. Now, what penalty there should be, that's up for debate. Certainly, people were talking about this online and pointing out that Sterling Marlin's famous fender pull in 2002 during the Daytona 500, where he actually got out of the car and the driver was doing it, was just a tail end penalty. He ultimately finished 8th in that race. But in this particular case, costing Joey Logano 2 laps, ultimately really taking him out of contention. He probably could have been right up there for the battle for the lead and may have even had something to say against Almirola if that penalty hadn't occurred. I mean, I'm not saying don't penalize him at all. Of course, you can't work on the car under red. But I do think that it points to another lack of communication with NASCAR. If there was a situation with debris in the stuck throttle, well, you could look at it from both directions. The team certainly should have communicated to NASCAR, brought an official over and said, look, there's an issue. We believe something stuck to the throttle. Can we take this thing out of the throttle linkage? And brought that up, I would like to believe that there wouldn't have been as much of a penalty and certainly not as much controversy as there turned out to be. What I sensed from at least the way that it was presented by the broadcast there was that this was just done of their own volition. Probably did it just really quick by the crew member, maybe not anticipating anybody would see it, but unfortunately the car had a roof cam, so of course people saw it. Whether or not it was just, an unthinking action. I mean, they described it as an unforced error in the booth there. Maybe that's the most accurate way to describe it. But certainly NASCAR should be very mindful of their own history when it comes to stuck throttles in general, and especially in New Hampshire. Perhaps a little bit more alertness to that. I think there was a lack of communication when it came to that situation too. I think that NASCAR should look at that very critically. And then if you take another step beyond that, how is debris able to make the throttle stick to begin with? Didn't we address the same issue 21 years ago? Didn't we address the same issue and try to find automatic throttle stops and everything like that? I don't know if that's still involved in the car. I don't know if that's still something that's available for the drivers. I don't know if there's still something that protects the throttle body from having debris get into it. That should be a concern. I was thinking back to Darrell Waltrip's speech after Kenny Irwin's accident, and the fact that he was just wondering, okay, well, did the throttle get hung on the floor mat or did it get hung on the air cleaner? What did it get hung on? And that was ultimately not really at least described publicly at that same time period. But in this particular case, you have an example years later with the cars radically different from back then and still an issue with stuck throttles. And now also, it's also must be said, this isn't the first really time that we've seen stuck throttles be an issue. It's been a big issue in the truck series, particularly the last couple of years. There was one driver at Darlington, I believe, last year that was finishing last. It wasn't Tanner Berryhill, but it was, I don't remember the driver's name, but I know he drove for the Riam Brothers team, and they had a stuck throttle that ended up putting the truck in the wall. And luckily it wasn't a serious accident, as what we saw in 3 before February. But it was an issue with stuck throttles, and I've heard it come up here and there, mostly in the truck series, not so much in Xfinity or Cup. But that would have been a perfect opportunity on the broadcast side to do something with, like, again, the Ford cutaway car or some equivalent of it to really discuss the throttle linkage, where it is, how something could get in there, because we're just left to speculate as much as anybody in the booth there. I would have really liked if there was some effort taken to do that at that moment. And really, quite honestly, I hadn't even really noticed that they don't really seem to do the cutaway car kind of thing anymore until today, because really today was a perfect example of a time where they could really point at things. Fox does that a little bit this year, but I guess NBC needs to work on kind of having their equivalent of it. I don't know if they just didn't have access to it because they were reshuffling things in the booth or anything, but that would have been really helpful because I think that's a troubling situation. So again, kind of at the long story short with Logano, I agree that there should have been some kind of penalty if Logano's crew wasn't communicating with NASCAR on that. It actually looked like the crew member was wearing a Freightliner uniform, so it seemed like it was somebody from Keselowski's team. So maybe that's why they didn't have any supervisory control over what they were doing on the 22 car instead. But either way, if there was an inability to bring this to the attention of NASCAR, or if NASCAR had just vowed that it was going to be a penalty no matter what, that should have been brought up more clearly. And that was really kind of an issue when he actually came down pit road, because even the booth didn't seem to really understand what was happening, because they originally believed that it was because they had equipment trucks on the track on the pit road when Logano came down pit road. If that was the case, then that should have been communicated more clearly. But then, of course, this other information comes up later. I think, maybe just in the matter of trying to be first or anything that's kind of brought around from social media, I think that in the booth, I think it's kind of leached into that a little bit, which is unfortunate, because I think there were a lot of positives from the booth in general today. Certainly Dale Jr. being able to report these accidents on the track a lot quicker than really either of these booths have done, both Fox in particular and NBC to a lesser degree, being much more responsive to it. I do think that there needs to be a better play-by-play aspect to it, though. I think some people are just willing to just tune out the broadcast crew in general and just kind of, ignore it. It seems like they get ignored a lot in the media center, quite honestly, because, it's people are just kind of focusing on what they do and, getting the information from where they can get it. But, again, I think that broadcasting needs to be more than just a reaction video. And I think Junior was the strongest of the group in this case, but there needs to be a little bit more organization as to who's doing what. I bring it up constantly with the ESPN group, that you have a strong presence in the play-by-play, and then you have other competitors up there that, as color commentators, but not just to remark at this and remark at that. One would kind of catch on the pit strategy, or maybe the chain reaction after an accident or something, or somebody else remarking at something else. Just a bit more organization as to who's going to cover what, so they're not all three of them trying to do the same thing and, tripping over each other. It turns into like a Skype call at some point here, and everybody has to stop and say, oh, no, you go, no, you go. That's kind of what it felt like at this point. But there were positives in general. I still think it was a step above with Rick Allen, and with all due respect to him, I don't know what's happened. If it's just I'll give any of the talent in the booth the benefit of the doubt. An issue of the production, if it's the direction that they're being given. I just think there's such a big difference between the way Rick Allen broadcasted the Truck Series races and doing a great play-by-play and introducing a lot of these new competitors out there, to the Cup Series and this kind of bingo number approach to describing action, and saying the 17 on the inside, the 5 to the outside, the 17 gets in the 5 gets into the 3, side by side, 3 wide, and that's about it. It's unfortunate, because I think that whatever direction he had back at the Speed Channel was better than what he had at NBC, or just the strategy has changed or something. If it is something more culturally relevant, if it's to the point now where we kind of forget about what play-by-play needs to be, then that's something that needs to be addressed too. And these things only get clear when you kind of, shake things up a little bit. And given how many things have changed in NASCAR so drastically and are going to continue to change in NASCAR through next year in the next gen car and all these new tracks and everything, it's still surprising to me the broadcast crew seems to change the least. And the way that these races are produced seems to change the least. They seem almost kind of immune from a lot of what changes around them, which is disappointing. I think that there needs to be more of an accommodation to social media and to YouTube and to other outlets out there that kind of do a lot of the same things they already do, and in some cases better, and perhaps using their access and their funding towards something that those assets can't do, and really kind of capitalizing on that, whether it's attracting different talent or just actually producing stuff that we aren't already seeing, not underestimating the intelligence of the audience and, quite frankly, what they're able to have access to on their own. Do we need all these shows that are going to be reporting on the Matt DiBenedetto thing when everybody's already seen the Facebook video and commented on it and gotten debates about it on Reddit or whatever? Is that kind of necessary anymore? I think these are the questions that need to be asked. But again, it's one of many questions that I'm sure people are now no doubt going to have from the broadcast and from everything else in between here. And there's plenty definitely to talk about between now and when we get back to racing at Watkins Glen in a couple of weeks. Nicholas Gray, thank you for your question on here too. What message was Kyle trying to send the pace car? Good question. Wasn't it interesting that they switched up pace cars? Apparently, that was being reported there, that they switched up to the white pace car there after I guess the gray car got bumped by Kyle. It didn't seem like there was that much contact or anything like that, but I don't know. I got bumped going to Sears Point there, and it's enough to scrape the paint off a little bit of the bumper there. I don't know if it was even that much contact there from Kyle Busch's car. And heck, with weren't they both Toyotas? I mean, I think the bumpers would line up a little bit better. But yeah, I don't know what was going on with that. But you go a little bit further back into the sport's history, and of course Dale Earnhardt bumping the pace car or anybody else doing it. But now is not back then, and the technology being what it is and all that. I'd be interested to get more on the story of that. I think clearly he was frustrated, and undeniably so. I'm not going to say he shouldn't be. I think that was a real absurd way to lose it. And writing it for an article, it's really hard to put any kind of positive spin on what happened there. It was just, it was unnecessary. It shouldn't have happened. NASCAR should have been much more mindful of the rain, especially with the weepers in turn one. It seemed like even NBC's broadcast crew was showing attention to those weepers in turn one before the race actually started and kind of drawing more attention to it. So if you're it, I don't know what's going on. I was reminded very much of our coverage back at Darlington in 2019. I bring this up a lot because it seems to come up a lot. But before the Southern 500 started that year, there were huge weepers coming out from beneath the safer barrier in turn one and dripping right across the track right as they were finishing driver intros. And they were making it seem like, oh, the race is going to start in 5 minutes. I'm like, no, it's not. They got to dry that off. I'm like, okay, am I going to have to just kind of position myself over there? Because I think I know where last place is going to be settled, and very quickly in that case. Thankfully, that wasn't ultimately the case. The storm came through at that point, washed the rest of the track, and of course, the rest is history with the event running well into the night. Certainly not a case this time around at New Hampshire, where the track doesn't have any lights and had to have the race cut short by darkness. Seemed like that happened a lot at Pocono in the past, but definitely a case with this here at New Hampshire. And ultimately, for whatever safety reason, it would be interesting to see how much darker it was, or if it was about the same as that Martinsville race that Jeff Gordon won. And kudos to Dale Jr. for even mentioning that it would look darker quicker because of the cloud cover and the rain in the area too, which definitely seemed to play a role. The race being kind of okay to keep going to ultimately not being able to continue at all. And quite honestly, I'm pleased that they got the race in at all. I was really not thinking they were going to, but it seemed like the more prudent thing would have been to just kind of delay the start as much as they could, and recognizing the rain was in the area. The radar seemed to show that there wasn't anything there, but somebody else was pointing this out on Twitter, I think during the race, saying like, hey, you could have, just look out a window and you'll see any amount of rain there. Look at the lenses on the cameras as the cars are going around, and you can see some gathering moisture on those at the same time. How much is too much? Well, at a flat track where the tires are entirely needed for the adhesion to the track there, and you have no banking to whisk it away, and I guess it's not appropriate drainage. Used to be there was basically a swamp in the infield at New Hampshire years ago. You're going to get a situation like this, and it was a problem. Really, it was a little bit of a problem, later in the race there too. I don't know how much more of a problem it was for the drivers further back in the pack. It'd be interesting to find out. But certainly something else that NASCAR needs to look at going forward. Let's see. Yeah, another backfiring of 2 p.m. starts, Ryan Moore. Exactly. Yeah, I mean, you have a situation with that. If you started this race earlier, there probably would have been a window to get it in. It's easy to say that in hindsight, but it certainly bears repeating, because with the race, when it did get started, would it have had to be cut short because of darkness? Maybe not. Maybe they would have got past the halfway point when that first rainstorm came by, and they would have just ended it back then. You never know at that point. It's all conjecture here. I know, I can't speak for everybody here on the West Coast, but I wouldn't mind seeing these races earlier in the day and having more of the rest of the day kind of freed up for whatever, whether it's doing the stuff for the articles or anything else. But unfortunately, that's just not the paradigm we're working in right now. Hopefully it changes, but I'm not sure if it's going to. Yeah. Let's see. DFS vids. Somebody are watching Cops, and somebody got arrested wearing a Clint Boyer Jack Daniels jacket. Goodness, that was that was a wonderful paint scheme they had back then. Interesting story with that team too. At the same time, Michael Harvey. Yes, you mentioned kudos to your team, by the way. Ryan Preece, of course, in the 37 car, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. not finishing in last place. Their streak of 3 consecutive last place finishes, almost matching their streak of 4 that they had last year coming into this exact same event was ended ultimately by the same driver, Kyle Busch, who, again, as I mentioned, had his first driver to finish last of this 2 years in a row. So I guess the streak ends at 4 out of 6 races for last place finishes between the two JTG Daugherty efforts, neither of them in the actual lead for the LASTCAR championship. In fact, I haven't recalculated it yet here, but of course, with Kyle Busch not having a last place run coming into this year, Almirola should still be the leader in the LASTCAR Cup Series standings, unless I think the tiebreaker went to Stenhouse, and I don't think he was that far back in this particular case. Do we have the results here? Let me get that pulled up. We haven't really looked at that too much. Shot in the dark is the headline on NASCAR.com at the moment. And a big picture of Kyle Busch wrecking at the start. 47 car for Stenhouse. No, he's a solid 15th. So a decent finish there. Keeping a decent foothold there for trying to get into the playoffs here. Although it almost certainly is going to not be on points. Going to have to work out something with wins there. But you still got Daytona in the near future. And who knows what could happen at Bristol. He was good at the dirt track, Bristol at least. Ryan Preece ended up in 22nd after his thrilling win in the modified race. That was a big reason I brought this out here. Congratulations to him on that. In spite of the struggles he's had as an open team driver this year, really trying to make the most out of that opportunity, and who knows what's going to happen next year. And, of course, when you have these 37-car fields, it's interesting that car 37 ultimately ends up being the only open entry in the field. Preece, of course, having the win in the Truck Series this year, and now the win in the modifieds and everything. It's good to see him still getting some kind of presence out there. And good for NBC interviewing him as well. I know that was mentioned by a lot of people there, that NBC is doing a better job talking about drivers further back in the field. Certainly Jeremy Clements, among other competitors in the Xfinity Series yesterday. But that would be another one to kind of look at there too. But great runs for Fords in general. They finish first, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth out of the top 10 drivers. Denny Hamlin comes back from his spin in that earlier incident there to finish in the 10th spot. Matt DiBenedetto still 11th despite that pit stop. I guess the field was strung out enough that they could work that out at the finish. It seemed like when on their Twitter they were expecting about a 15th to 17th based on how many spots they were potentially going to lose with that stop, but they didn't lose that many positions there. Kurt Busch, after last week's win, finishes in the 16th spot. I believe he was the last person to lose a lap at the finish there. I think Stenhouse should have been the last car in the lead lap coming to the stripe. So kudos to him after being so many laps down after his incident with Suarez last week in Atlanta. Looking further back, Bubba Wallace in 26th after that incident there on the backstretch with Chris Buescher. Seemed like he was having he was kind of going stroke for stroke with Suarez there in the 20th spot. But unfortunately that spin seemed to drop him back a bit. Tried a little bit of strategy there with DiBenedetto. Didn't quite shake out there for him. Chase Elliott dropped off the map after having what looked like a decent run at the beginning there. Just had the wrong strategy or something. Fishing back in 18th. Justin Haley in 28th. Cody Ware 31st. Anthony Alfredo seemed like he got a lot more damage after that incident that he had earlier in the race than it appeared. The rear clip of the car seemed like it was about to fall off at the end, finishing in 32nd. Kudos to Alfredo, though. He had a lot of his family there, apparently, which was good to see. Saw them all wearing matching 38 gear, so that was pretty hip. Garrett Smithley, I believe, was tops. Well, no, actually strike that. Cody Ware would have been tops of the Rick Ware group in 31st. Smithley, 33rd. Bilicki in 34th. And James Davison with clutch issues finishing 36th. Only 3 drivers actually listed out of the race. Quinn Houff, after his incident there with Ryan Newman, went back out there, ultimately dropped out with crash damage from there. James Davison with the clutch issue, and of course Kyle Busch, your last place finisher in the event. So again, a lot to look forward from here. Hopefully things turn around at Watkins Glen. We got two. So we got the 2 road courses. We got Bristol and we got the Daytona race going into the playoffs. Getting down to our next coverage, that's going to be trackside at Las Vegas in September. Already making preparations for that as well. I also want to take a moment here to thank those of you who also tuned in to follow up on a short live stream I did during the caution flag. I was going to do this later in the week, but again, I mentioned it there. The J.D. McDuffie book was not renewed by Waldorf Publishing. The reason simply was just loss of funds that Waldorf had from COVID last year, and they had to kind of tighten up their catalog. Unfortunately, we weren't on the right side of the cut line. Fortunately, the book sales were very good for those first couple of years, and it, of course, means, of course, there's plenty of copies out there. There's still going to be copies available on Amazon and other listings, anywhere else it's available. I've even seen a decent number on eBay there, too, that hopefully they haven't done anything too crazy with the prices for. But at least the printing that's through Waldorf is effectively over at this point. But the good news is that I'm going to self-publish the book and still have it be available. My original goal this weekend was to get the printed version and the electronic version back up as soon as possible. And that's still the goal here, but it's just been a real nightmare to kind of reformat it and get it set up there. I may end up actually hiring somebody to do that. So if anybody knows somebody that's interested in that, I'd be open to it, because I've been just reloading it pretty much the last 2 days, and it's just not quite come out quite right. And I want it to be absolutely right for anybody that's certainly paying good money to check it out. A couple of things that I'm adding to the book there. I have reformatted it so that it can have pictures in color. I've reformatted it with other basic, a couple of errors that I caught up over the years. There's one part where I mentioned that I misstate Liz Allison as Linda Allison, little things like that. And also just some other information that just came about since 2018. There's been a couple other bits of information that were clarified to me by other people involved in it, and other cases where it was expanded upon that really kind of I felt needed to be in there. Not getting too anal about what needed to be in there from one point to another. I think really if you already checked out the first edition, you're going to see it's going to be substantially the same. We're certainly not adding or removing chapters. It's nothing like that. But that's really, the standpoint on there. In the interest of that, the big thing I may prioritize going forward is doing my own audio book of this new edition of it. So if you've already bought the first edition, first of all, thank you. But if you have the first edition and you have the audio book, or you're interested in the audio book, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, because our contract's over with, hold off on getting the audio book that Waldorf put forward, because I'm going to put out my own version that will be of the second edition, and it'll be available as its own thing. I'm going to put it up on Amazon, and you guys can check it out. And it'll be of the new version. So any new content that's in there, that'll be in the version of the audiobook that I'll be doing. On that same note, I do have a plan also. I'm going to go ahead and say this because we're going into the off weekends here the next couple weeks. I may do a stream during that time, but I'm going to certainly take advantage because we've got 79 people in here, and thank you guys for tuning in. I am planning on doing a special stream on the evening of August 11th in recognition, or in honor rather, specifically, of the 30th anniversary of the accident that claimed the life of J.D. McDuffie. Certainly can't let that date slide by. During that, I was planning on doing actually a live reading of segments of the J.D. McDuffie book. So if you haven't had a chance to check out the book, or you're curious about it, I'm not going to read the whole book on the stream. I think the stream would go quite too long at that point. But certainly selections from it. I think that would be kind of perhaps an appropriate way to do it. I know it's a delicate subject, certainly, and trying to find the best way to do it. Will most likely be about 5:30 in the evening Pacific time on August 11th. I'll have the details worked out certainly by our Watkins Glen show the Sunday before that race, and we'll get into more details on that. So I look forward to that, and that'll be on this channel here too. And I have something else planned for that day as well. I'll have more details on that as well, so I have some ideas there. But yeah, the Derek Cope book, I saw some questions on this when I brought up the other video. This has no bearing on the production of the Derek Cope book. One reason that I had mentioned the video earlier this year that the book doesn't currently have a publisher, and that is, at least at this moment, still the case. I was looking for other options outside of Waldorf, even at that point too. Certainly once they weren't re-upping the JD book, I want to kind of try some different things and see what other options are out there. And that's where I've been on that point. So it has no effect on the Derek Cope book. The only effect I guess it would have is just been a matter of it's taken some time away that I've had to focus on getting it republished and getting it set back up there. Probably the plans over the next 2-week break. Might be working on the audiobook in that time. I'd like to have it done by August 11th. I think that would be the best case scenario. I'm just going to have to budget my time on that and figure out a way to do that. But we'll see how that goes on that end. But again, that's something I'm going to be kind of working on there. But the Derek Cope book is still going forward. I still have content I need to add into it there. But it's pretty much done. If I had to turn it around in 30 days, I could do that. So that's not really an issue. But we're getting there. I know we're getting towards the midway part of the year, so I don't know if it's going to end up self-published or not. I haven't really set a drop dead date in terms of what's going to be the separation between like when I can't delay it any further and when I'm going to self-publish it. I'm just going to have to kind of play that by ear. Things are pretty unpredictable as they turned out to be. But that's still something that's really in the works there too. So we'll have some more information on that. But those of you that are already in the Patreon, you've already heard about the JD book. I mentioned it in the last newsletter that I sent out there. Hopefully, those of you who are in the Patreon, patreon.com/LASTCAR on Brock, you have received that by now. I did send it out about, I think, 2 weeks ago. So hopefully that should be in your inbox. If not now, pretty soon. So, and again, I want to kind of mention at the same token there, I put this up on Twitter a while back. Somebody, and again, I have no problem with people, entering or leaving the Patreon or anything like that. Look, again, there's no issues with that at all, especially with how unpredictable things are these days. The only reason I bring this up is because there was one particular person, though, that said that they left the Patreon because they didn't receive their content that they signed up for, whether it was the $5 or the $10 level. I just want to, again, put that out there because I haven't heard back from whoever that was. Again, just send me a private message or Gmail or anything like that because I want to make sure that that's made right because I could certainly do that. So just putting that out there. Thankfully, I haven't had a lot of statements like that. So I hope that everything else that I've sent out for the Patreon members has been getting out there. And of course, if that's ever the case, that it hasn't, you definitely know how to reach me, whether it's DM on Twitter or email. Is pretty much the best way there. So that content's all available there at the same time. But yeah, so we got that, and really the 2-week break is just going to be used to just kind of catch up on stuff. I definitely have a list. I've knocked out a few things here in the meantime. Again, I think probably the JD book is probably going to take priority here in this gap. Hopefully it won't take the entire period of time here, but it does free up a lot because I do my entry list storylines and everything else there in between. So that kind of frees up a little bit even during the week. And maybe I can work something out on that. Maybe what I'll do is I'll just do like a chapter a day, and then, well, that'll be 21 days. And I think that's, well, that almost works out. I mean, it's a month from now, basically. Well, a little bit under it. But we'll work something out on that. The way these things always seem to go with me is like, I get it to a certain point where it's like a lot of work and getting it going. And then it reaches a tipping point where it's like, oh, heck, I'll just finish it now. And then once I get there, whoosh, it just kind of goes through. So we're kind of working on getting to that point at least. Yeah. Michael Harvey, I see your comment here. I saw that Patreon has a yearly plan with it being a discounted rate. Do you still get the full monthly amount? I was asking myself about upping my monthly, but doing it with the full year package. I don't know how many people have picked up on that there, but I definitely, once they made that available, I want to go ahead and just make that a thing. So if anybody was interested in that, yeah, I don't know how it crunches down in terms of the numbers or anything, but I haven't seen any significant change in, the reduction in the amount or anything like that. So yeah, if you're interested in doing the yearly thing and all that, that's definitely an option. So no sweat on that. That's meant to be for your convenience, not on my end here. And yeah, certainly if you're locked in for a year, I mean, that's fantastic on my end. So however much I get on that, that's certainly fine. So don't worry about it on my end. I'm more concerned about making it something that's affordable for you guys out there. And I've been really touched by how much support that's been given. I've actually looked at my YouTube numbers too. Really, I need to post the picture of the chart that it even during the starting grid time, it changed by such small amounts, but I can really tell that people really enjoy a lot of either these streams or the regular produced content I've had on the channel, because it's really stepped up the subscriber numbers really since 2019. It's been a big change from there. So I really appreciate that for you guys out there as well. So kudos to you on that. Let's see. Oh, Billy Noyes. Which 3 drivers without a win do you see getting a win to make the playoffs? Reddick seems to be knocking on the door. I'm very impressed with him. He was outstanding today. And kudos to the NBC crew for paying more attention to him when he was doing that well. Yeah, he's one to look at. Stenhouse potentially for Daytona. I wouldn't rule him out at all. If he doesn't have a problem in the first stage, he'll be a factor in the finish. That's pretty much guaranteed. Especially more so at Talladega than Daytona, but he could still be up there. So we'll see what happens. Matt Benedetto is certainly looking to at least not overdrive the car, but I mean, certainly kind of strategize something there. It seems like he and the team are on the same page to just try anything, and something could work out there. But again, you got to look at the tracks that we have, of course. If you have these two road courses, the short track and the super speedway, it's hard to really factor in somebody that's a mile and a half kind of guy. A lot of the guys that would be good at those tracks pretty much have one already. If you got your Kyle Larsons, your Ryan Blaney's, and so forth. I guess you got to kind of look at each of those tracks individually. Suarez, even. I think I wouldn't, Suarez and Bubba Wallace, really both of them. I think they're going to probably really turn up the wick here after this 2-week break and really push to try to make the playoffs. And, if it's, I'm not sure about the road courses. I think Chase Elliott and Martin Truex and Kyle Larson are going to be very tough to beat at Watkins Glen, and to a certain degree, the Indy infield road course, although Chase seems to have the advantage on kind of the infield courses lately. I think that's going to be a tough stretch. Bristol, under the lights, you could just as easily have Kevin Harvick win as you could have him finish in last place. And if he, by that point, needs to win, because maybe we had a couple other unusual people at the road courses, who knows? Ross Chastain, certainly one that could get some good runs at the road courses. Matt Benedetto's run at Road America comes to mind, but Chastain's run at Coda when it was raining there. Something to look at. We get a storm that rolls through the Indy road course. Who knows what happens? Although even you could have an even more unusual situation depending on what Austin Cindric's schedule is, or AJ Allmendinger's. One of them come in there and take away a win where they have no bearing on the championship at all. I think that's what you really got to watch for these next couple of races here, especially Cindric. Cindric, I will congratulate him wholeheartedly on earning that ride in the number 2 car. And with that team doing as well as they did with Keselowski this week, he is going to be absolutely tough next year. And it seems hard to say that because you got the next gen car, and we've seen Chase Briscoe really struggle this year after he was so good in the Xfinity Series last year. We've seen the big three just start to get their feet under them in the Cup Series this year after being in it even longer than that. Maybe I'm sure he'll have some kind of an issue with some of these tracks. And we've seen it to a degree when he runs Atlanta, Richmond, or some of those tracks there. But at those road courses, I think he's going to be very tough. I fully expect him to be among the contenders right out of the box at Sears Point. I was a little disappointed he wasn't on the list this year in that to make because we had some open spots in the field. But I guess he just didn't shake out on that, and that would have been good to see him and Allmendinger. But maybe we'll see how things kind of go for that next year. And of course, we have a more normal race weekend in 2022 there for the action here, and with the construction of the new facility that they're going to have outside of Turn 11, be a good place to view it from. So that'll be an exciting thing to cover for you guys next year. Certainly anticipate to keep that on the schedule for the immediate future here. So, yeah, kind of a lot of them to look at. Probably if I had to pick, if I had to pick 3, boy, Reddick, Chastain, Stenhouse, maybe Stenhouse, just because you got that plate race there. It could just as easily, and that could be a toss-up. It could be Austin Dillon at Daytona because he was really good at the 500 this year. Seemed like he had the move that was going to work before what happened with Penske guys and McDowell on the outside line. On the inside line, Dillon I thought he was going to be very tough at the end of that. Ultimately ended up right there at the front of the field getting through the wreck. But who knows? Again, it could be a place for Bubba Wallace to get up there. We never got to see how good Daniel Suarez was at Daytona in the 500 because he got in that big wreck. That's the exciting thing about that 400-mile race is that wreck was so big in the 500 that we didn't get to see how good a lot of these guys were going to be. They got just eliminated immediately. And, of course, that also seemed to set off the frustrating turn of events for Almirola this year that ultimately led to his finish today. Recall that we talked about how strong Almirola was in the duels that year and seemed to have a good car, only to get collected in that wreck. We'll see. Ryan Preece could pull off Daytona. Wouldn't it be amazing if you had the one open guy actually qualify for the playoffs here? It certainly could happen. Preece seems to actually have a little bit of an advantage even on Stenhouse when it comes to Daytona. I think they're more or less equal at Talladega, with Stenhouse a little bit better. But I think at Daytona, it seems like Preece is really, especially in the 500, he's snuck in there to have some good runs. which is certainly good to see. He had the speed back in February. So yeah, I mean, who knows on that end? That'll be something to look at. Let's see. Michigan. Oh, I forgot about Michigan. Yeah, Michigan. Okay, so you do have a kind of a big track there. So you have a kind like that with other guys that can get up there. Certainly a track that Harvick has done well at in the past. Logano, other Ford drivers. If the performance that we saw out of them in New Hampshire today is any indication, they could be just as much of a factor in that race going forward too. So we'll see. Yeah, Michigan, not Bristol. Okay, Bristol's in the playoffs, right? Okay, so I'm sorry I keep repeating that. So okay, so Bristol's in the playoffs. Okay, you eliminate that, and you have Michigan in there instead. Well, that does open it up, because when I think Michigan, you think about fuel mileage, you think about guys that are just not, you think of Jeremy Mayfield winning on fuel mileage. You think of that race that Mark Martin won, where Greg Biffle and Jimmy Johnson ran out of fuel. If you thought some of these other fuel mileage races at Pocono were crazy, imagine one where it's absolutely do or die for the playoffs. That could be interesting. So yeah, no, actually Michigan kind of opens it up. I'm not crazy about them having 2 dates, but certainly that one too. You mentioned Brian Vickers there, Alexander Luft. There's another one, our crazy Michigan winner. Brad Keselowski got his first last place finish there last August during the doubleheader weekend they had there. So yeah, it's going to be crazy. But yeah, it's going to be a long few days. I'm planning on doing another show here during that. Probably just one show, I think. I don't know if I'm going to do more than one. We'll kind of play it by ear. But because I do like doing these. So we'll kind of keep that going, especially if we get a lot of news like we did this week. Let me get back to my notes here. I wanted to kind of keep some notes together here on this, because I find it hard to memorize all the things that happened during the week. So I kind of have some points on that. We'll do show and tell here as well. I got something for that in a little bit here. First of all, I want to mention thank you for the support on the video that I did with NASCAR Man on the New York City road course. I thought that was a really interesting story that played out there, that you had, really, especially with Chip Ganassi being involved in it too. That was a big reason we kind of were pushing to kind of get that one out as soon as possible there after the news of the Trackhouse merger. Really unusual. Can you imagine? I mean, it's so hard to imagine nowadays, of course. But back in the early 90s, having a infield road course race around the World Trade Center complex and down through the financial district. Can you imagine just the sound of that, where it's like reverberating through the skyscrapers? Like I know back in Las Vegas, before all the stuff that happened that year in 2011, they did a thing where the cars were going up and down the strip. But imagine the acoustics of just like skyscrapers, rattling with the noise of the Indy cars going through there. I'm not the biggest IndyCar fan. I don't follow the series nearly as closely as others out there. But that would have been just an amazing competition out there. It's unfortunate it didn't quite happen. For those of you, I won't spoil it there beyond that, but definitely check it out if you haven't already on NASCAR Man History's channel. So we got that one done this week. Let's see. So we talked a little bit about Matt DiBenedetto losing the ride. Cindric and Harrison Burton did the Cup Series, of course. Harrison Burton taking over DiBenedetto's ride in the number 21. Gotta say, I think people have been kind of split about Harrison Burton, about if he's ready or not. Certainly the way that he took that victory at Fontana last year seemed to kick off a really good start for him. He had some great runs towards the end of the year. I think he was probably the only driver in the field that was frustrated the season ended when it did. Because going into the Phoenix finale, he was riding a hot streak there, pulling off that last-minute win over Noah Gragson at Texas, and then that victory at Martinsville, of all places, where the Xfinity Series hadn't run in so long. I think he put on a great show, and he's done solidly this year. He hasn't been quite as dominant as he was at those periods there, but hopefully we'll see him, get his feet back under him, and the Wood Brothers might be a good home for him to figure that out. I do think at the same time, that it does point out that you have these two different situations going on at the same time with the charters, and that you do have a situation where, it's great that it does point out both a positive and a negative at the same time. And it is possible for both to exist in the same world, just because NASCAR is just like that these days. It's both great that you have Xfinity Series talent that is very clearly ready for the Cup Series, at least ready to attempt it. on a full-time basis, because of course now you can't really get in there as a part-time guy unless very limited circumstances in your Cindric or Allmendinger circumstances here. But you got these guys up there that, yeah, you want to see them compete against Cup guys. And some people, their answer is, well, we need to have more Cup guys in the Xfinity Series. I'm like, no. Get in the Cup Series, because that gulf between what the Xfinity car is, what the Cup Series car is, they're already this different, and now next year they're going to be this different. So doing this isn't going to be any help. You may as well just have them race against the Cup guys and snowmobiles. Have them just run in the Cup Series. But the problem on that end, of course, is there are not enough Cup Series teams, part-time or full-time. When JR Motorsports can't get into the Cup Series because they can't get a charter or multiple charters, you got a problem. So increase the size of the fields, really make it an open competition to get people up there. And again, I like my idea from before that you have to have a way to make people earn charters, that it's not just the money. That's a big problem that everybody always has with the Cup Series field and certain drivers that are in there. It's like, oh, this is just a little rich kid, and he's got the money to buy the charter. He's got the money to buy this. He's got the money to buy that. So what did they do? They create another obstacle that you got to pay your way into to even run in the Cup Series. Well, you have to have some kind of merit system to offset that at the very least. Have it be so that maybe there's 37 charters because this other group earned one because like this team did this or this driver did that. I think that would be something worth looking into, and maybe just naturally progress to larger fields instead of just saying, okay, this is it and that's the cutoff. Maybe it becomes a larger number. I don't see why that isn't possible, but it's just kind of one of those things. But I think, Harrison Burton is going to be interesting to see, and the Burton family certainly is all in with the sport. Between Harrison and, of course, Jeb Burton, now finally getting his first win this year and getting his legs under him at the Colleague team. I think Colleague's effort is going to be another huge story once they get full-time into the Cup Series. And it's going to be fun to watch. So, yeah. Charter system is just a bigger NFT to hold. Yeah, Irvin Alvarado, you're right on that one. That's for sure. Let's see. Well, what else we got here? Let's see. I need to actually just do like a tablet in the background. I just kind of put this in the distance and just glance at it, because otherwise I don't like it where it just looks like I'm looking at my phone here. Let's see. Speaking of videos here, I know seeing some discussion there on the Bobby Ginn video. I didn't really talk about this last week. I was very interested by the comment that came across there, and actually got some other messages there from the same person there. It looked like somebody from the Ginn family saying there's even more details about it, but wasn't really at liberty to discuss that much of it. I've pursued trying to get some more information here and see if there's a way we can have a conversation on it. I haven't had him reach out to me yet on that, but hopefully something kind of clears up. Again, it's hard to tell when it's just somebody on YouTube or just somebody in a comment and, what information they have or don't have or all that. But I'll give anybody the benefit of the doubt. If it turns out that it's not the case, there's ways to certainly verify that. But it'll be interesting. I was very pleased from their response to the video, first and foremost. But if there's any more information that could be found from what happened during 2007 to 2008, certainly the world financial crisis plays a role in everything that happened there. But it's interesting that this particular set of circumstances really took place before that really hit NASCAR in the 2008 to 2009 timeframe. That this was more mid 2007. Why was it so much earlier in this chain reaction? Was it something specific to the resort communities that they were putting together? Did they feel the pinch first before it was just average home buyers? And then you had, his banks that he was working with versus other banks. Those are the details I'm sure that are out there to kind of figure that out. And I'm certainly open to that. I'm open to following up on anything. That's, again, same thing mentioning with the JD book and adding more information in there that has come to light since then. Those are kind of the things that we certainly look at. But yeah, those are big ones to look at. Let's see. Ryan Moore, thank you for your super chat on here. Brock, hope you've gotten to the checkout Lost Speedways. The Texas World Speedway episode is great. Thank you. Thank you, of course, for the super chat, first of all, but also for mentioning Lost Speedways. I haven't checked out this season yet. I enjoyed last season's for sure. But Texas World Speedway is certainly a big figure in that. I like that Junior even mentioned it in his interview with Jimmy Means on the Dale Jr. download there. I think they had a good discussion on that. It actually cleared up Baxter Price's last place finish in backup Jimmy Means car on that. I think I actually did a feature on that as our Texas throwback article back when I did kind of, that was kind of the direction I went before the entry list storylines article a few years ago, talking about that. So it was cool to get that clarification at the same time. I haven't seen it yet, but I got to check it out. So that's definitely on my list. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with Motorsports Business Management's Cup team. I hope they're still going to be running races because it was nice when they brought the 13 car back for the All-Star race. And I think at Nashville, it's unfortunate to see them withdraw from last week and then not being entered at all in this week's race. I don't know what the situation is going to be for Watkins Glen. Hopefully, I mean, if they can get a road course ringer in there to offset things, or I don't know what they're going to do. Boris said has run some Xfinity races for him. Is he going to do that, or is he going to run the Cup car? It sounds like Boris has kind of changed his mind a little bit in terms of how much he wants to be involved in the sport as a driver, at least. So, yeah, we'll find out. Let's see. Also want to mention condolences certainly to the family of Sam Belnavis. I know that I've talked about him a couple times in the Rise of the Field Fillers series in particular, talking about Todd Bodine's team from 2003 as part of that field reduction in that time period. Sam Belnavis is a figure that I'm surprised doesn't get talked about a whole lot. I think it's a little bit disappointing in the descriptions of 2311 racing, as great as that program is and as great of a storyline it is to have Michael Jordan involved in the sport. I think it's caused people to kind of forget that in that gap between Wendell Scott and 2311 racing, that there were other African-American owners involved in the sport, and to a great deal. Sam Belnavis himself was involved in a lot of the work at Roush as well, which is a big reason that, he was working with the Ford team and Travis Carter's effort there, and kept Carter's team going for that 2003 season when he brought the National Guard on board and you had that Bell Car Racing team. They may not have had the best results that year, but kept a lot of people employed that wouldn't have ordinarily been, and kept a team going that was trying to keep going at the same time. Of course, you think about Thea Dixon in the same blush, who's also no longer with us, that both he and Tinsley Hughes were invested in Carl Long's effort and getting that team going there. And both of these teams coming around in that same time, that late 90s, early 2000s period of the sport. And then, of course, you have Brad Daugherty's team even at the same time. That is even kind of overlooked completely in this discussion, that the team's still being active, and Daugherty being active not just in NASCAR, but now the SRX series at the same time. Jonathan Cohen's team, Victor Obaika's team. Say what you will about Cohen's team or Obaika's team just not being in the sport, but they've been in it, and they've been just very much hands-on and when they've been in there. I still think back to Phoenix in 2018 when Jonathan Cohen had a group of, his supporters out there, all of them wearing matching uniform shirts, just friends of theirs, and taking selfies in front of the car and stuff. And it was great. Same thing with Victor Obaika. He was right there with Tanner Berryhill, even after they wrecked, and just helping them sort things out after the incidents they had back at Phoenix there. It's unfortunate that we don't have Obaika involved in the sport one way or the other. I think these small teams are interesting in that respect. But again, there's a lot that gets overlooked sometimes, whatever the narrative is or the discussion of it. And Sam Belnavis, I think, really falls in that same category. I mean, it's good that we're talking about, Sam here a bit more than he has been really since 2003. But I'm more of an advocate of, giving people their flowers before they're gone. You like to really know that somebody's appreciated while they're still out there. And still involved in one aspect, not save up all the nice things you're going to say about somebody till after they're gone. And that's unfortunate. In some cases, there's competitors that have come and gone in the sport that we may never hear about, that weren't involved in there, or the entry lists or the finishing order doesn't show everybody's name or their car number or anything like that. But certainly, in this case, there was that. So again, condolences to the family of Sam Belnavis and his supporters. It was certainly good to see Roush's team running the decals on the cars this week, and certainly giving him some attention to other people that have broken the mold in the sport in one way or another. And hey, that National Guard sponsorship ended up being a big role in the sport from there. Just look at Greg Biffle and how long he had that sponsorship afterwards with Roush. Wouldn't have happened if it weren't for the efforts back then. So another thing to certainly mention at the same blush. Hey, Alexandra Benatti, welcome back here from Brazil. Always good to speak with our international viewers here as well. On that same blush, I mentioned Brad Daugherty here. Great. Really got to give props to the Superstar Racing Experience on the conclusion of their first season. I still haven't watched all of them yet. I watched the dirt track races. I guess Stafford's the only one I haven't really seen cover to cover because that's when I was in Texas. But these last few here really have enjoyed it. And I love having it on the Saturday night thing where it's integrated into the track's existing night race schedule that they had late model races or dirt track races at the same time there and making it a full weekend. And just exciting seeing that massive crowd at Nashville Fairgrounds last night. The biggest crowd they've had there since the 1970s. Absolutely fantastic. I think they put on a great show. Congratulations to Chase Elliott for getting the win. Good to see Bill Elliott do well, getting in a better car that's at least up to snuff with the rest of the field there. That purple car is the de facto LASTCAR winner, although I know our William Saki has written about Bill himself and the other last place finishers of the series this year, actually covering the action at Slinger last week. You can check out his article on lastcar.info there as well. We're going to have some more news on the lastcar.info front coming up here as well. Not ready to announce that yet, but we'll have some more information in terms of coverage coming up here very shortly. But yeah, I really enjoyed the series. I loved the competitors they brought in. I'm excited to see who's going to be involved in it next year. I think what was nice, it was nice seeing that everybody involved in it, from the broadcast crew to the drivers to Ray Evernham and everybody else, and of course certainly the fans, were just having a great time, and that's what it needs to be at the end of the night. I love the production that CBS Sports put into it. They haven't missed a step since they've been out of NASCAR for so long. I thought they did a great job with the drone works and everything like that, and making the camera movements exciting and everything, but not distracting. I think there's a lot that NASCAR can look at it positively there for their sport going forward. But yeah, loved it. And we got to discover new talent along the way, which I didn't expect. When this was first announced, I thought it was going to be entirely older drivers that were retired from their sports. Didn't expect to see Marco Andretti in there, or Ernie Francis Jr., or Haley Deegan for that matter. And I think all those drivers gained a new appreciation. And I love the twist of bringing in the local driver, whether it was Luke Fenhouse or anybody else in there. Doug Coby jumping into that red, white, and blue car at the same time to make things interesting. Fenhouse very nearly had that win at Slinger, and Marco Andretti put on a great show with him at the finish. So great way to introduce tracks that don't get featured that much, drivers that don't get featured that much, and drivers that you just love hearing their names again. And really, Alan Bestwick, who by all means really should still be involved in a lot of motorsports announcing these days, being able to say names like Bobby Labonte and Tony Stewart and kind of put you back in that time period back when these drivers were racing back then. That's where it's part of the experience. I know there were people questioning earlier if we need play-by-play guys anymore. It's an art and it's a skill, and not everybody can do it. And Alan Bestwick is one of the best in the business. And to hear him and know what excitement he brings to those broadcasts. And also kudos to James Hinchcliffe for being a great second chair there. And, again, even making the radioing the drivers thing entertaining, which I've usually not been a big fan of in NASCAR broadcasts. It always comes off just awkward and kind of cringy, really. In the SRX series, I think it's something you kind of look forward to. Everybody pulling off their best Tim Richmond impersonation by talking while they're racing is a great twist, too. So that's always fun. Let's see. Yeah, who do you think should be in the SRX next year? I mean, I would love to see. Somebody suggested this. I like the idea of a family night thing where you have like sons racing against their father, like they did with Chase and Bill Elliott. Maybe have maybe a couple different races where they get in the same cars or something. But yeah, Ryan Blaney versus Dave Blaney kind of thing. Or yeah, I mean, like you had with other competitors like that. Yeah, I'd like to. I mean, heck, get some of these guys that are broadcasters back in there. Get like Dale Jarrett back out there or something. Who knows? Some of these guys, I mean, that may have retired from the sport, they still got that fire. That's one of the reasons I picked up Paul Tracy's shirt, because I thought, I never fully bought the whole thing where he gets in all these rivalries and stuff like that. I mean, on the one hand, do I in that sense? Because okay, well, yeah, he's a guy that stirred a lot of stuff back when he was in open wheels, and now he's a retired driver, doesn't have to worry about driver contracts or keeping up appearances and stuff. And do I believe that, yeah, he's still going to be riling people up? Yeah. Do I think he's actually angry at these people? No, not really. It came off a little professional wrestling to me, but I liked it. And I think he was having fun doing that. And I think he enjoyed it. I expected Willie T. Ribbs to kind of be the guy that was going to kind of stir the pot a bit. And he was certainly giving Paul all he could stand at Slinger there at the start when they were kind of banging fenders there. But yeah, any other competitors you get in there, you never know what you're going to see from 1 week to the next. And gained a huge appreciation for Ernie Francis Jr. this year, coming up second in the championship standings that they had to Tony Stewart. You can almost not even count Stewart in this thing if it's his series and everything. It's almost too much of an advantage. But you're not going to tell him he can't race at a dirt track or anything like that. But Ernie Francis Jr., I think, gained a lot of fans during this, and hopefully gained some more attention for his efforts in Trans Am as well. Because Trans Am has produced so many great talents over the years, whether it's Tommy Kendall or Irv Hare or Scott Sharp, and then much more recent competitors out there. It's good to see, certainly. And I wasn't sure exactly how that was going to work with having younger guys in there, but they were just as interesting as the veterans there. And I'd like to see kind of the same thing. I hope they don't really change too much about it. Even all the way down to the paint schemes, just being that plain primer gray with the X's on the side of it. I love the simplicity of a lot of it. Like I say, with the shirts there, where it's all hand drawn around the car there. I think it gives it a great grassroots feel, even though there's really big names that are being involved in that sport this year that are behind it, whether it's Tony Stewart, Ray Evernham, or Marcus Lemonis even as the presenting sponsor with Camping World. So yeah, give me Robbie Gordon. Robbie Gordon would be a big one. He has to be in it. You want to see Robbie Gordon get into it with Paul Tracy and Willie T. Ribbs? I sure do. Todd Bodine. Yeah, absolutely. Terry versus Bobby. Yeah, absolutely. Get Sterling Marlin out there. I can't believe we had a New Hampshire. We had a Nashville Fairgrounds race without Sterling Marlin in it. I know he's dealing with a lot of medical issues, and that's the other thing you're going to have to balance with all of this. I mean, Parkinson's is an awful disease, but he seems to be keeping up great spirits. But I would love to see him back out there. Get Morgan Shepherd out there. Why the heck not? It's all short track racing. You want to see how tough that guy is. Everybody's scoffing at the starting park thing and all that. Put him in one of these short track Saturday night things and see. He would have been a match for a Dick Trickle type out there. I mean, he hasn't stayed in the sport for nothing. So yeah, bring in Kyle Petty. Yeah, Mike Skinner. Hey, give Johnny Benson a chance to not just drive the pace car. That'd be fine. I wouldn't have anything against that. Let me see what I got here too. Okay. Yes, that's a lot of my notes that I had there, so that's good. All right. Let's talk. I'll touch on the Xfinity Series race here as well. I don't know if there's too much to really talk about on that end. Christopher Bell, the winner, because it's 54 car, and Daniel Hamrick comes up short again, the third spot. Mason Massey, your last place finisher, that restart there seemed critical to the last place battle there. Had to look at a couple of replays to see who he actually hit to the back of, but there were indications that he ran in the back of the 78 car. His teammate Jesse Little there at the back of the field. But Mason Massey dropping out after just 26 laps. Sam Mayer, involved in the same incident, completed 2 more laps before he dropped out. Brandon Jones, also involved in it, ends up making it to 102 laps before radiator problems. CJ McLaughlin in 37th, and Alex LeBay rounding out the bottom 5. The feature for that is already on the website at lastcar.info. Jeremy Clements, great run for him again in the 15th spot. Mentioned him getting some TV time during the race. Brandon Godovic, I think, was one of the ones I was really impressed with. finishing on the lead lap in his return to the number 26 car, his best run, I believe, since the Daytona a couple of weekends there. A bit further back there, Jay Buford in the 18th spot. Yeah, lots of interesting stories from there. This too bad Jordan Anderson ended up back in 34th there. I hated to see him struggle so much at Texas there. Really, I mean, not even that long after talking to him there with a mechanical issue that left him and Bailey Curry in the garage area for more than 50 laps. Anderson ultimately getting back on the track while Curry did not. In this particular case, we had a situation where Anderson ends up finishing what looks like 7 laps down or 6 laps down in regulation. But still getting back in the car. Hopefully he has some better runs in the Xfinity series coming up, because a lot of his past runs were just start and park efforts for RSS racing. Good to see him actually get some runs in his own equipment here, which has turned some heads here. Certainly, whether it's been Josh Berry or a lot of some of these other guys in there. Again, I'm not a fan of having Cup guys in there, but I'm also not a fan of new teams shutting down. So they gotta they do what they have to do, and even in those cases, they're not quite able to pull off victories in that sense. Just shows how difficult the competition actually is. Wishing the very best to Michael Annett, of course. The report coming out about his hairline fracture in his leg. Hopefully he's recovering well enough that he can come back at Watkins Glen, and that's going to be a tough stretch to try to come back in there if you have any kind of issue with your legs. Coming into Watkins Glen, and then the Indy road course is after that, or is it Michigan after that? It's like right in that stretch there, so that's going to be difficult. But certainly hoping that they work something out on that end. Yeah, Scott Dixon to SRX, absolutely. Morgan Shepherd has to be on roller skates as the pace car. I like that Billy noise on the. Yeah, Austin Foster had the same idea. Yep, a roller skating race. I like that. SRX, yeah, it can take any number of different directions, but I think really it would be hard to say that there's too many issues with it this year. I like that they keep the controversy to a minimum. I don't mind the cautions. Like, it's clear it's a show. Like, I mean, okay, they have cautions that come out for commercial breaks and everything. They can do that. I mean, it's I was about to say it's not for points, but it is, because you got a championship and all, but it's just meant for fun. It's even less serious than IROC in that sense. It kind of, even though it takes a lot of inspiration from it in a lot of senses, but yeah, Matt Kenseth SRX. Well, that might almost be too unfair. I think he'd probably dominate that, but yeah, absolutely. All right. Let's see here. Harrison Burton, Daniel Hemrick. All right. I mean, that's pretty much open and shut on the Xfinity Series 1 to talk with. So, okay. Wow, gosh, we're already past an hour on this. Okay. We'll get into our trivia segment here next. And, of course, any other questions you have from the race weekend or anything I didn't mention through here, by all means, let me know. We'll cover that on the show here tonight. In the meantime, I'll have you guys pick which category you want, and I'll do our show and tell segment next here. So we'll have that packed show for this evening. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it so far. Categories that we have here, again, NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. Those are your categories. So again, NASCAR, pits, teams, tracks, drivers, and the wild card. So go ahead and mention in the comments which category you'd like, and check that out. Did I see F1? I did not watch the race, but I have absolutely seen the accident. Hard racing between those two. I know in Formula One, whenever somebody bumps somebody else, it's quite literally an international incident, because these cars are so expensive and they fall apart so easily when something runs into it. And I know there's a lot of passions on both sides of it. But I got to say, from my very, and I'll really point this out, very casual knowledge of Formula One, very basic. It always seems like you have one guy that just hits on it, and then he stays the top guy for what seems like a really long time. And then suddenly somebody, just one other guy, just finally catches up to him. And and in that brief time where the main guy is struggling a little bit and this other guy is catching up, that's the most interesting time in the sport. That's where you get a James Hunt and a Niki Lauda. That's where you get Ayrton Senna and Alan Prost. That's where you get Michael Schumacher and what, Kimi Räikkönen or something, or no, Mika Hakkinen. I don't see. That's how little I know about it. One or the other. Those kind of situations there. Whatever your big rivalries are in one point or another. Those are the interesting parts. And I'm hoping that this is an indication that maybe Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen is the next rivalry we're going to have for a bit here. And maybe it stays prolonged. It certainly draws people's attention to it. Do I think that Lewis Hamilton had much intention of making that corner? Well, in a NASCAR sense, no, I don't think he did. But my standpoint is a bit slanted on that because, again, I'm looking at it from a very different standpoint there, where in NASCAR on road courses, you are absolutely charging into those corners and you're virtually out of control at one point or another. And if you try and move like what Hamilton did in a cup car, yeah, you're probably going to spin that guy out 9 times out of 10. So that's about all my thoughts on that. I think anything beyond that, I don't really have much thoughts on that. NASCAR leads with 4. Okay. Hamilton versus Verstappen versus Schumacher. There you go. I mean, it's all Greek to me. I did the Formula Last One website, and it got literally 0 hits. Like, they have no interest in whoever finishes last in those races. That was a little disappointing. But it wasn't my big hope to really expand it that much into it. We'll see where things kind of look on that end here. There's still kind of – things are always pretty flexible over at the LASTCAR site here, although stock cars are kind of really the bread and butter. And I think that's – it's good to stick with one's strengths, I think, at one point or another. DFS Viz, what year did I start watching NASCAR? 1991, July of 91. First race I went to, June of 92 at Sears Point. That's where you get a hairline like this. So there's that. But yeah, been at it for a while. My YouTube channel goes back to 2006. Actually, when I was looking up my YouTube stats, it didn't even show them for the first 3 years. So yeah, that's a whole other time. Let me do what's this? We'll do the show and tell here while I'm thinking about it. So this is something, again, tied in with New Hampshire. First of all, talking about the stuck throttles, I'm glad it was a safe race today, to say certainly the least. For those of you who are longtime viewers of the channel or not even that long ago, you know that one of my biggest videos on this channel is 3 before February, talking about the accidents that claimed the lives of Adam Petty, Kenny Irwin Jr., and Tony Roper during the 2000 season. Just recently restarted the Tony Roper Memorial Scholarship Fund. More information on that as well in the video for that. This is something that came up here. This is something that I found on eBay around the same time here these last couple of weeks. And so I definitely wanted to show this here. I came into possession of this actual memorial sticker that was made in honor of Kenny Irwin Jr. There's pictures of midget racers from around that time with this same sticker on it. And I found this on eBay just a while back. It's actually on the original dot matrix printing paper here. And it's still in fantastic shape on here. So I definitely, when I saw this here, it definitely wanted to pick it up here. This is not the end of the story, however. What I have done since then is I have done a full scan of this sticker and kind of cleaned it up a little bit. You can't really see in the picture, but there's a little bit of fuzz on here from whatever place it was put in, it like seat fabric or something like that. But what I've done is I made a scan of this, cleaned the scan up a little bit, and I'm looking into doing reproductions of this sticker as a fundraiser for the Kenny Irwin Jr. Foundation. One thing I always thought was really strange back when these accidents happened, there would always be J-Ski reports that they were doing special decals that were printed by certain organizations. And the statement would always be, oh, well, these stickers aren't publicly available. Nobody can get them. Nobody can get these anywhere or anything like that. I think now in hindsight, with all this, especially with the 42 team now kind of, really going to cease to be, really. We don't know if they're going to run the 42 next year at Trackhouse. And even if they do, it's going to be under completely different ownership than it was even back in 2000 when the Chip Ganassi deal was first announced. So what I have decided to do is, I have already scanned this. I've already ordered some duplicates. I'm going to look over and make sure they look okay first. I'm not going to sell them until I know that they look decent. And I'll tweet some more information on this once they come in. I hope they come in this week. But I'm thinking about selling these for, I'm thinking like $10 a piece, if that's okay. Free shipping on those. It's just going to be a few of them here. If it really takes off, we'll order some more of them. But the profits from those, I'm going to send over to the Kenny Irwin Jr. Foundation, which is still active. And I believe it's at Kenny Irwin Jr. Foundation.org. So certainly with this, I think that would be something to kind of work on there. So if you want to get one of these, I'm looking to kind of make that possible, quite honestly. I'm a firm believer in sharing the wealth here, and that's certainly the case. They did a great job with this sticker here, too. So look for some more information on that. I hope it comes out okay. I did a really high-quality scan of this here. It looked okay in the render that I sent, and it's through the company that I ordered my LASTCAR stickers through, at least the car stickers that I sent out to the Patreon members. Same company as them. So we'll have that worked out. So stay tuned. I'm going to post a tweet about it before. I already posted the message in advance to those of you in the Patreon on this, but I'll have more information on that when that comes up. So that's a big thing on there. So the other thing too, the person that I bought it from, he also threw in this one here too, from back in 1998, the old Texaco Haviland sticker on here too. I thought it was a great deal on that. I don't know if this one would work as well with the scan. It's kind of more of that kind of raised graphics on there, but you know, we can always work something out on that if that's possible. I think there might be more of a copyright issue with that, with Sports Image and Texaco and so forth. But there's certainly that one there as well. Definitely a driver that doesn't get talked about nearly as much, and that's where it was really a real passion project in putting together that video. And I'm sure Rick Houston felt the same way when he was doing the Firestorm series on this podcast earlier this year as well. So it's good to see these drivers get talked about a lot more, and certainly good to see technological advancements being what they are. But of course, as the situation with Logano indicated earlier today, there's still much work to be done, and that finish line is never in sight. So hopefully something gets worked out on that end going forward. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into our trivia segment here for tonight. And we'll check that out here. Let's see here. First race is 1992 Napa 500. Okay, there we go. Which would that be? Good eye, Brian. Are you thinking, let's see, was there a Napa sponsored race? Because that'd be the Hooters 500 was Atlanta. Napa 500 used to be either California or Atlanta back for a while there. All right. Which category is leading here? Oh, Blake Thiemann, you're doing about your okay. We'll see what trivia questions we can get on here. First, remember, it's 2001 500. Oh, goodness. Let's see. Which one were we on? I think NASCAR was leading on here. Yes, Hooters. Oh, your first one was, wow, Hooters 500. That's incredible. There you go. Is Corey Roper related to Tony Roper? I haven't asked him yet, but he's from Texas, so I'm not sure if he is. Like people move all the time, so it's possible, but I'm not sure if I've seen the resemblance from him yet. I saw him walk by at Texas. I should have interviewed him there, but I haven't got around to it. Hopefully we cross paths again, either Las Vegas or Phoenix, and our planned covers rest of this year. That's something I'd kind of like to ask for sure. Which category do we have? Yeah, see a few for wild cards. See some for NASCAR. NASCAR leads with 4. Jesse Krill, I saw your comment on that. Is it still a leading one? I think it still is. I grew up in Birmingham. Oh, well, see that. I can't imagine how big that must have been with Davey going for the championship that year. That's what makes it. That's what makes sports captivating. You never know what's going to happen until it does. All right, so we'll do NASCAR here. I saw a good number of votes for that. We'll jump into that. All righty. Here we go. First question of the evening for NASCAR. How many of the top drivers share in the NASCAR Winston Cup Points Fund? How many of the top drivers share in the NASCAR Winston Cup Points Fund? NASCAR was leading? Okay, good. So we'll stick with that one. Big thanks to No Tires Just Gas. She was apparently at New Hampshire today and sent over a couple pictures of Truex's car. I also got a couple pictures. Where was it? I'm going to make sure I credit the right person here. It was yesterday. At Giver48 on Twitter. Thank you for your picture of the 99 car on pit road, the Brunt machine. That dropped out there with Mason Massey. So we got that picture there as well. So kudos to both of them on that. How many of the top drivers share in the NASCAR Winston Cup Points Fund? Again, these are late 90s questions on this NASCAR Trivial Pursuit game. We got questions. We got categories for 10 and 36 and 15 and 12 and 20. And the answer is the top 25. I was going to guess people have said 10. I thought you guys were right because I figured it would be anybody that sits at the head table. The top 25 is the answer. Bean Boy 89, I think you were the only one to get that one. E, RD Fox 76, you're very close. But Bean Boy 89, you got it. All right. Here we go. Next question. When did beach racing resume after a break for World War II? When did beach racing resume after a break for World War II? That's our next question. Miata is always the answer? Yeah, maybe not to this one. When did beach racing resume after a break for World War II? Okay, I guess it's for 46, 47, 48, 50, 58, 46, 50, 49. Okay, here we go. When did beach racing resume after a break for World War II? The answer is 1946. They did not wait very long at all. 1946. Good Eye Brian, I think you were the first one on that one. Jesse Krill Incorporated, Alexander Luft, Zachary Leffler, Tom Anderson, after 1 year, WF Hornet, I'll count that. Cameron Caves, Alexandra Benatti, Bean Boy 89. There you go. Several of you got that one. GP Laps, I got to check out your New Hampshire video. I haven't seen it yet, but it's in my list of videos to watch. So kudos to you. Thank you for checking in, by the way. I don't know if you're a frequent visitor to the stream here, but I appreciate you tuning in. I'd be very interested if, let's see, you did one on Watkins Glen, I think. That was good, if I remember correctly, because I was certainly going over that in the JD book there. It's interesting to see other history of that track in particular. You know, I'd especially love to see like an older version that actually used that chicane, the old chicane that they have at the exit of entering turn 5, because it's weird when you go to the actual track. The pavement, it's still paved. I was told it was originally torn up when I did research for the book, but it actually still has a paved stretch there. I don't know if it's used for like, it looks like it's used for like working trucks or anything like that, but it's very narrow and it's immediately flush with the mobile homes. At least it was in 2018. So that was interesting. But again, a little bit of history on that track. I mean, there's so much there for sure. Planning on covering that again one day. I'd love to take another bite at get the credentials on that. So that would be fun to do. What year did William Henry Getty France form Bill France Racing Incorporated? There's an interesting one. What year did William Henry Getty France form Bill France Racing Incorporated? Yeah, maybe not the question you'd expect. 60s Glen is awesome. Super narrow. See, there you go. Yeah, like that. I can't imagine. I mean, again, when you don't have the guardrails, but it's just, or you do have guardrails and fences and trees. Yeah, I mean, it's such a lush area out there. You're literally driving country roads, more or less. So, and then not even to talk about the 48 course. I mean, if you're going to that one where it crosses over the railroad tracks and all that, yeah, or at least used to. I don't know if the tracks are still there. Yeah, I remember that. We did the lap there. When we stayed with Charlie Birch, he took us on a lap around that. I don't remember if we crossed any railroad tracks or went under a bridge for that. I don't. Did I do video of that? I hope I did. I know I took pictures. I don't know if I did a video of that. I should have. I got to look through my archives on that. That'd be interesting. Maybe LASTCAR filmed it. I'm not sure. I'll have to check with him on that. What year did William Henry Getty France form Bill France Racing Incorporated? All right, we got guesses for 39, 40, 50, 2021, 48, 38, 78, 63. The answer is 1953. 53 is the answer. Blake Thiemann, you were the first one on that. Good on you. Yep, the entire course was redesigned for 71, I think, was the first year they ran that, if I remember correctly. I'm kind of reviewing it while I'm re-editing the book. So, yeah. Yeah, 53. Yeah, Blake Thiemann, and I think it's just you. I think, yeah. That's what it looks like. There you go. All right, we'll do a couple more questions here. You guys excited for the Olympics? I'm partial to the rowing competitions there because that's my old alma mater there. I also like that cycling race where they run on the wooden Bristol and then they stack up every year and somebody twitches and you have a big wreck. But it's like rollerball or something for your for an Olympic medal. Next question. What 50s year was the first Darlington Record Club dinner held? Wow, these are really specific. Good choice on the category, folks. What 50s year was the first Darlington Record Club dinner held? The wooden Bristol. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's what it looks like. There's no gradient banking. Imagine gradient banking with with bicycles. Somebody comes out there with a cardboard sign, and then suddenly it's a 30 bicycle stack up. What 50s year was the first Darlington Record Club dinner held? Olympic soccer, yes. If I remember correctly, I think they said that Japan was going to have the Olympics in 1940, and then, of course, the war got in the way of that. It's just weird how that all works out. Sign lady on the Bristol. Exactly. What 50s year was the first Darlington Record Club dinner held? And the answer was 1959. 1959 is the correct answer. I don't. Oh, no. Beast of Metal, you got it. Oh, Cameron Caves. I think you. Oh, RD Fox beat Cameron Caves as well. Who was the first on that? Looks like I see Cameron. No, RD Fox 76, then Cameron Caves, then Beast of Metal, and then Ryan Moore. There you go. Used to RC NASCAR races on the bicycle velodromes. Yeah, see, those would be fast, just lightning fast. It'd be like that old. There's that video game, Big Scale Racing, that has you that reenacts like running cars on a velodrome, even in the rain, which is even crazier. I don't even think that would be possible. But yeah, those are exciting. All right. Okay, let's see. Okay, we'll do one more question for tonight, folks. This question here, one more question. So here it is. What legend lied about his age to drive his first NASCAR Winston Cup race in 1957? A lot of old school questions tonight. What legend lied about his age to drive his first NASCAR Winston Cup race in 1957? Can I sweep with 0 to 5? Well, we'll see. Here's the question there again. What legend lied about his age to drive his first NASCAR Winston Cup race in 1957? Ryan Yeoman, Cale Yarborough, Smokey Unick, Fireball Roberts, Fireball, Junior Johnson, Ned Jarrett, Al Bundy, Polkai, Cale Yarborough, Junior Johnson, Itchard Petty, Fireball. We'll see. I'll give you a couple more seconds here to get your votes in, and then we'll wrap up with this for this evening. All righty, and E, not quite. Okay, I think we're about ready to do the answer. Here we go. What legend lied about his age to drive his first NASCAR Winston Cup race in 1957? The answer is they called him Cale Yarborough. Cale Yarborough is indeed the correct answer. Yeah, I know. R button didn't work. I couldn't get my X button to work on my old computer here, so that's why we had to upgrade this last year. So Cale Yarborough, first one to get that. Dick Rathman, there you go. Good guess. Cale Yarborough, Maserati 9. Looks like you were the first one to it on that. WF Hornet, looks like you got it as well. Jonathan Wayant, Irvin Alvarado, you guessed Cale. That's good. There you go. Yeah, Cale went that long into NASCAR, 1957. Imagine young Cale Yarborough. Probably looked older than he thought he was or something, because he was always a tough son of a gun. So that would be the one on there. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. That'll do it for our live stream tonight. I hope you enjoyed the action tonight. Stay tuned for more information as I get the duplicates of these in. I'll have more information on that on Twitter at LASTCAR on Brock, as well as the Patreon, patreon.com/LASTCAR on Brock. And we'll see how that goes there. Big thanks to everyone for tuning in, for following along at LASTCAR on Brock for the live tweets for the races this week. I know they were a little bit later in coming than past weeks there, but I'm definitely looking forward to these next couple weeks to kind of reset a little bit. Our next stream we'll probably do one next week. Maybe we'll do them on Sundays still around the same time. I don't know if I'll do one each week or if we're going to do it on the last week. Stay tuned on Twitter. I'll have more updates on that. I'll try to give enough of a heads up that we can jump in and do these here. But in the meantime, check out lastcar.info for all your last place needs. The article on the Cup Series will be up later tonight after the conclusion of technical inspection. So far, looking to be a Kyle Busch article, but we'll find out from there. Other than that, you guys enjoy your off weeks here. We'll be back for sure for Watkins Glen at the beginning of August here. But we'll touch bases from there. So have a great couple off weeks, folks. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. We'll be back for more action from there. So have a good one, folks.